Okay, yeah, so we're good. All right, we're on. So, hey, Emily Hightower, we were just getting too deep into the talk. We're midday here. You are jamming with an absolute cool background. I can't really tell what the background of where you're at. I'm in my kitchen.
Oh, this is my yoga traction
Oh,
wall.
wow. Well, then let's start
Yep.
right there first and foremost. What is a yoga traction wall?
Right. Why wouldn't we go right into that? It's a device where you can, insert these little
Hmm.
hooks that go into these sockets, and then you have a secure root against which you can do traction with down dog or therapy bands, all kinds of. It's rooted in the Iyengar yoga tradition, and yeah, it's
Wow.
great.
So you're okay. So that's what we were going to start, and then I just pressed play. But is your background? Can you just take us through? Is your background in yoga?
It is. I mean, I have multiple different threads
Hmm.
that led me to, of course,
Hmm.
where I am today. Professionally, the yoga training that I had about 20 years ago was with Deborah Cohen, and she is an Iyengar background teacher, but she trained me in the pranayama therapeutic breathwork model that I apply through the skill of stress today. So there's yoga in there. I'm also a health coach with a nutrition degree, and then a lot of trauma informed training on the side so I can kind of work deep.
Yeah, right on. So and that's what I reached out to you. As I said to you, Emily, your stuff has been. For some reason, I've been reading. I don't know how long, but I feel like a really long time. I've been following what your work is, and you have a beautiful work of art, and you study a lot of stuff that I come, like we said before, play. I kind of come at it from the sport background and baseball primarily, but then trying to learn this from many realms of thinking and being able to ask good questions and learn some stuff with yoga in particular. I never really liked yoga when I played, but I respect yoga, and it's interesting to learn the principles of yoga and learn just the concepts and the foundations of it. And then as you start learning that, it makes yoga very like, why wouldn't I do this, right?
Yeah,
But
totally.
the for some reason when I was playing, I couldn't understand why I would want to do it. It almost was like something I had to try to check off. And I'm sure I'll ask you about that as well. But for people who are listening,
Mhm.
because we're going to peel into a lot of stuff that you do primarily, can you kind of take us through, and you just did, what you do right now with the career that you have going?
Sure. So my husband Brian Hightower is like you. He's been a high-level athlete and helps me all the time with Intrinsic, which is
Hmm.
our company. But I've partnered with Power Speed Endurance with Rob Wilson and Brian McKenzie to align because our language is so shared around stress, adaptation, and embodied
Yeah.
breath work, and how kind of harnessing your physiology can not only transform your state but completely transform your
Hmm.
options for how to behave and
I like that.
respond to stress of any
Yeah.
kind. And so the work that informs that philosophy right now is through Intrinsic, through Power Speed Endurance as well. And I work with many different populations right now, all to train people in the intrinsic skills of breath, body mechanics, and mobility. I don't even call it yoga anymore. It's the principle of
Mm,
movement and embodied
nice.
awareness. And then nutrition always comes in, but it's not my focus because you can't really teach
Yeah.
nutrition until you get embodied with your breath and your physiology. So nutrition is a knowledge base that helps inform my holistic approach, but my main focus is, yeah, I can go into more of who I work with if
Yeah,
that's
for sure.
helpful.
Although I have a question, I'm going to
Yeah.
hammer you on that nutrition breath thing because I have a big question on that one too. But keep going, keep going.
Okay,
Yeah, I
hold
will.
it
I'll hold it.
or
I'll
bring
hold it.
it. Okay. Yeah, it's also connected. So currently I work at Four Winds Farm, which is a trauma recovery campus. And I work there just 1 day a week. The COVID
Sure.
shutdown has obviously changed our template. I also partner with Roaring Fork Neurology. Dr. Brooke Allen has a practice locally, and I'm there to provide this intrinsic skills training to kind of nourish her patients who have neurological concerns and
Hmm.
conditions, to reskill them in participating with the breath to nourish their path to brain and whole body health. So we do some biofeedback there, embodied
Wow.
movement, breath work. And then I work with combat wounded veterans year round through various nonprofits with Challenge Aspen military opportunities locally. And then that's led me into work with SOCOM Adaptive Care. That's our Special Ops
Yep.
Command. And then with BLESMA lately, which is a group in the UK. They're called the Limbless Veterans. So they're all amputees that have served and are, in retirement or recovery stages.
Wow.
So the work's all the same though, because we all have the same physiology.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess that would be what I've learned is everyone is the same, right? Like you could work with a baseball player today, and maybe never even worked with a baseball player, and you would know because you know physiology or you would know how to help them, right? I would assume that that's like a confidence point of just understanding human behavior in general. Something as you're saying all that, and I'm not going to forget that nutrition piece, but now I have another thought in my head here is, you're talking about some super deep work of the topics that you just touched on, of the people that you work with. So I've got to imagine, without being in those environments, I've got to imagine you've heard some and seen some wild stories and had some wild past from people. And you're talking about breath work and intrinsically moving and thinking, intuitively, and some of the things of feel and physiology. Do you see that as okay, how would I tailor this towards, like, most of us in modern, I guess I live now, so this is how I'd have to perceive it, but most of us want a quick fix, right? So we want to have the pill or the foundation. But when you're talking about what you're saying, I think through my experience, I've learned it's a discipline, it's a practice, it's something that you got to find progress in, momentum, just like anything else. But if someone comes to you with a big traumatic past, or you're getting them in a mist of destruction, how have you sort of navigated to tell them how you can help move them forward, even if they're wanting something like right now? You know what I mean?
That's such a good question. So what comes to mind in responding to that really thoughtful question is that, first of all, the thing I love most about breath work is you can instantly share with somebody how important it is.
Yeah.
And so in certain populations, I try to interpret the education based on the frequency of who I'm working with, where they are. You have to read the temperature. Yeah. If someone's in crisis mode, that's not a time to lecture about, the brain on stress and the neurology and physiology. We get to it. Sure. We breathe, and very quickly the breath will bring them into awareness. And I try to get people out of their heads, out of justifying why they're uncomfortable and telling me their story in that moment, and help them co-regulate using breath. That said, I think where I was going earlier with that answer is that it's really amazing to take some groups like the SOCOM groups and make them suffer with breath a little bit, just some breath holds, get them thinking about their CO2 tolerance, participate at an edge so that they respect it. And they already do. These people self-regulate more than I do. They've been through things that I hope I never have to see or deal with. So having that baseline understanding that they already practice a lot of this stuff, we're going to reframe it and then hopefully turn them on to the endless quiver of breath skills that can endorse a deeper relationship with this incredible training.
So you said a big word in there too, of awareness factor, right? Because the goal is objectively to teach them skills that they are aware of when you're not even there, right? So how can they learn? So if I'm thinking, if I come to you and I see you in that day one and I feel something and I lower breath or whatever, do a breath hold, I feel either some stress or I feel some down regulation, whatever it is, and then I leave. Do you what have you seen to help or work with people when they do leave and maybe you've only known them for a day? What are some of the things that you would push or tell somebody to pay attention to, or to at least try to help them keep making progress?
Love it. Well, the first piece is humanizing these range of human conditions. We personalize our fear and our pain, and then we get more reactive.
Wow.
And the breath can enhance that.
Yeah.
We can breathe in ways that are reactive and can collate into more destructive patterns. So I curate it with a lot of, try to do some light teaching about the neurology of stress and breath. And I lean on Dr. Daniel Siegel's Brain in the Palm of Your Hand for a starting point. It's like the simplest model to explain flipping your lid. And its most quick and dirty explanation is, you have your lizard brainstem that's keeping you alive. You have the thumb as the limbic system, which is the mouse brain, which is carving tunnels of behavior based on avoiding pain and seeking pleasure. It's reactive and emotional. And then you have your monkey mind that wraps over that. And so off the bat, I teach people that their stress response is normal, and that, I ask them to participate with me, like, who do you think's driving your breath out of these three systems? And with a little more engagement, it comes forward that the lizard is really in charge of the autonomic breath. That when we're stressed and mismanaging stress, and we're feeling anxious or depressed, what's happening in the brain is the lid is getting loose. It's no longer wired shut and connected to these lower survival structures. And then if we don't manage that, it will start to lose its grip. And then eventually one little thing that isn't a big deal flips your lid. Now you're in survival mode. So the last piece I teach is that, I have them take a deep breath with me. Add some layers of apnea or counting, and then explain, like, what you just did was you breathed from a different part of your brain. You breathed from here. You breathe from the prefrontal cortex, which seals the lid back down.
Wow.
And helps us have a whole brain. So no matter who you are or what your story is, voluntary breath rewires the chemistry of your brain.
Can you rewire okay, so if I voluntarily practice this every day, am I remapping? Like, am I strengthening that every day? Can I get this? So let's say I'm here and I am not even close to getting my hands to close. The analogy, so people who maybe are just listening to this, we were working on our fists, so you should watch this on the YouTube to see the analogy. But
my fist was flipping open.
But let's say I'm like cracked, right? So let's say I have a deep experience. Can I close it that day, or do I have to? Absolutely. Okay, so I can do that like no matter, regardless of an experience or a crack.
I want them to engage with reading their state and tethering that to this model of like, hey, I'm flipping my lid. My lid is loose. My monkey mind has lost its connection to my survival structures. The monkey mind being the evolved, rational, logical, empathetic intelligence that we can bring to resolve problems of all kinds. So I teach them, hey, you've got to be able to read in your body when you're flipping towards anxiety or when you're flipping towards depression. Let's talk about those arousal states in your life. Like, how do you feel? Give me some examples when you're, feeling keyed up and anxious, and everyone's got those. Sure. So we tie that experiential knowledge of reading state to their personal life. Hey, the next time that you're flipping your lid, rather than spin in the story, just detach from that. Notice, hey, my heart rate's elevated, my breath is shallow, oral, I'm clenching my jaw, I'm clenching the steering wheel, my outer muscles are shaky, I'm fidgety. Whew, I gotta breathe my lid down. And then through the training, they learn to breathe all the ways that you do in your coaching, right? All the ways Brian and Rob are teaching, it's all the same stuff. We get to the nose, we gear down, and you asked if you can do that in a day. With training, you can do that in 5 breaths.
So, but that's what I'm saying. So if I do that in the 5 breaths, right, do I make that, I guess what I'm asking is, can I have it be here? If I say I come to you like this, and then in 10 years of super focused, disciplined practice or what have you, and am I harder to open up if I just am practicing slow breathing? Like if I do that every morning and I just practice slow breathing, is my brain more intact just in general? Like even if I have a history of being very reactive, can I start changing that monkey mind and have it so strong, just like an actual muscle, years into it? Will I actually see behavioral changes?
2 things. First of all, absolutely yes.
That's awesome.
You are, they've done brain scans of Buddhist monks and compared those to early, like novice beginner breathwork practitioners. And same areas start to light up in the brain of creative contentment. The Buddhist monks have this like glowing orb of whole brain activity, calm, rested readiness, and beginning breathwork practitioners can access that. The neurons start to jump, that creative, centered, whole brain, monkey mind relaxed state gets curated. But the second thing is, if you do this kind of breathing when you're stressed, which no matter who you are, even if you're the Dalai Lama, I bet he has his moments.
Yeah.
Maybe not, right?
Yeah, maybe not him.
Maybe he just sails through. But if you start to look at your stress as an opportunity to train that response, then you're really cultivating the deeper strength of when the shit hits the fan, I breathe and I get my lid down rather than rattle off my story and start reactivating. And that's what you do in the 100%. Cold plunge.
100%.
Right?
Well, and that's what I see, because what has made the most sense to me about breathing is that it's a skill. Like you're talking about a skill here, you know, like you're talking about something that if I can learn the language of this, I've always just thought if I can learn the language of this breath, then I start to understand, you know, everything going on up top, you know, and if I can learn that, now I have an actual controller, right? Because you look at, I was telling you, I was on a call with a baseball coach before this, and we were talking about the mental game of sports is perception based, which I don't know if that can change. That's subjective. But then physiological stuff is objective. Like that is like, we can see the skill of breathing improve. Like you can see progress in it, just like getting stronger in a weight room. And what we came to conclusion on, and we maybe we agreed, and maybe he'll listen to this and tell me he doesn't agree, but what we agreed on is that like your higher calling as a human is your ability to make a story, like your ability to have a perception. That's like the gift of being a human. Now the physiological gift of being a human is now you have control of how you want to sort of navigate that to benefit you. And
Beautiful.
So when I'm you know, my question to you on that, feeding off of that, is when you see someone who comes to you with a story, even if it's not necessarily true, but they see it as super true, right? How would you, is it always breath as like the funnel of helping people, or is it, I'm going to try to help them see the truth or change the story? The perception of the conversation is going to change, or are we always sort of having breath as the skill development, and I'll let that take over?
Such a good question. You're on fire. I love talking to you. This comes up so much in my work, and what I have observed is that no, it's not all breath. It's bidirectional with our psychology. And I lean on the work of Byron Katie a lot. If you don't know her work, it's 4 Questions That Change Your Life. Her book is called Loving What Is. And her process helps us challenge what we think of as true. And I've found that it is bidirectional in the process too. First you learn the breath, and then like some clients will say, it's not working. And uncover that, you know, where are you downregulating to? If you have an underlying perception, for example, that like, you don't have innate worth unless you finish every single thing in your job that day, and you've taken on more than you can handle, and you still somehow tie your worth to that, and you're just trying to apply breath as a Band-Aid to fix that, you're not using the full scope of your brain and your humanity to create a different story. And the breath is the chemist. It's the alchemist that helps transform the story and embed it in our psyche in a more productive way. And it is, again, bidirectional. Once you learn to breathe, you start to be aware. You start to feel. And so, I challenge people through Byron Katie's process to say, like, okay, let's find your deepest fear here. Let's identify, like, what's the worst that could happen in your scenario? What do you believe is true? And then we challenge that to identify a deeper process that they can tether with the breath to kind of curate a new story.
Do you think that, because that sounds awesome to do in general, right? Like, is this true? What is my fear? Because there'd be a lot of benefit of discovering that for anybody, right? Which is intuitive, which is intrinsic, right? Like that's like, I don't know
Yeah.
your biggest fear, you know, I kind of know, I feel like I kind of know mine. Like, do you feel like you ever know what fear is holding you back, like, or what is true? Because ultimately you could get asked that question. You're the one that has to answer it, but then you're also the one that has to decide if even the answer is true again, or if that's the actual fear.
Exactly.
You know, I don't know if that's really a question. You made me think that. So now I'm just throwing it at you because I'm dialed into what you're saying.
Yeah. Will you say again what your semi
Yeah, so
question
my
is?
semi question, I hope that you can turn this to a question for me. But my point is, okay, so I think of it as I ask myself that question, like, is that true? Like, what? Okay, here, this can maybe make it a question. Like, I always think in my life is, what in my life right now do I think is true that isn't true? Because when I was 10 years ago, there were things that I thought were true that I found out weren't true about what I was thinking. And they were always good for me to figure that out. Like, it was always good for me to go, oh, that wasn't a really rational fear to have, or that wasn't really true what I thought. Once I was able to break that,
Right.
it was like I evolved, right? And there was like a confidence that comes with that. So now I always ask myself, what right now am I telling myself that isn't true, but I think it is true? Or is that fear logical or not logical to have? Like, what's the right fear to try to break? You know, like, yeah, I guess that
Beautiful.
would be the question.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think if you're not asking that question, then you're just living a reactive,
Mm-hmm.
shallow life, tying into probably some groupthink, getting reactive and fired up about things that may or may not be
Mm-hmm.
true. You know, at the end of the day, nothing's true.
Yeah. Yeah. There is no spoon.
There's no spoon. There's no spoon. And so all day long, we're responding to things that we believe. And a lot of times in the limbic system, we've cooked up
Mm.
stories that make us safe.
Yeah.
And that information, some of it's useful and some of it's not useful.
Sure.
And if we're not willing to challenge that when we feel reactive, then the ego's running the show and we're just trying to protect a shell of something that's not even real.
Mm.
And it is such cool work. I do this on myself all the time. And it's situational, you know? So for me, like getting in front of a camera was terrifying a year ago. Before I created the Skill of Stress course, the thought of videotaping a course was absolutely terrifying. And there were fears that were underlying that. And when I really challenged, like, what's true here? I discovered that what was true was that I was afraid of being judged, and I was afraid of, I'll get it wrong. I'll hurt someone if I share the wrong information.
Yeah.
That's a really important. And so those two examples, like one of those is really useful. It's really useful to identify the discomfort of like the responsibility of giving information that may or may not be, like, you've got to be in ownership of your content and be willing to say, like, this is the principle, this is the current science, this is what I've found to be true. Let's interact on this and learn and grow. Let's be real when something's wrong and figure it out together and grow. The other fear of like, people are going to judge me. Well, guess what? They are.
Yeah.
That's what you do.
That's a great point.
So it's incredibly empowering to realize, like, yeah, I am judged. That's totally true. But what's not true is I don't need to judge myself. I don't need to carry that. I can stand in who I am and let go. And so without belaboring the whole process, that journey is super important to me.
Well, I want you to stay in that because that's really powerful. Like, in the sense of what you do, you would teach people, like, I can already tell, like, you would teach me how to do that. You could probably give me the steps if I didn't have the camera fear, but I have some other fear. You could probably teach me the steps of how to do that. But then you also are a human, right? So I want to put this on in front of the camera. And now the things that I teach, I also have to break on myself too. So what is that like? How have you navigated that? Like, to know, hey, I'm still a human, even though I'm teaching this, I still have to practice the thing.
It's
Yeah.
awesome. This is growth. This is
Hmm.
participation. I'm so grateful that I have a purpose and colleagues that are willing to trust me to help me
Hmm.
grow and give me honest
Hmm.
feedback. And it's definitely what drives me to keep doing it, is that if I don't face my fears and show up fully, I'm either going to miss opportunities for this one precious life to make an
Yeah.
impact, to be a better coach and a better human, or I'm going to suck.
Yeah.
I'm going to deliver something that truly isn't in alignment with who I really am. So those emotional cues of like frustration, fear, ego rising, sweat,
Yeah.
pupils, breath, temperature, that's a signal now for me to go, you're either living in your fear and you're not facing reality, you're not being
Yeah.
truthful, or there's something really important for you to address. You're not centered. You're creating something that's not in alignment. So stop, breathe,
Yeah.
get to your center, and then fire, then create.
Yeah, so two things that come to mind on that is, one, you said something really valuable to me in terms of knowing your content or trusting your content and owning that, right? When you work with like a high stress experience or somebody who is in, really traumatic experience, or they come to you, and what is how did you break the fear of teaching what you know and being okay with, like, there's had to have been times where you find something years into your coaching that you thought was true, because this is going back to your question, and you find out something you were teaching somebody wasn't true. How have you evolved or dealt with that? Does that make sense?
I think so. You're saying like when I'm working with somebody and I'm delivering training
Yeah, like they're
information.
coming to you for information, and
Yeah.
you have to deliver
Okay.
it.
Yeah. Um, on the base level, the way that I teach is all about guiding you towards your
Okay.
truth. And I use science and physiology
Hmm.
principles that don't preach a dogmatic method. So, what you're going to uncover is true or not true for you. And I can stand beside the current science that I
Yeah.
understand, right? But when I encounter a moment where, like, that was
Hmm.
misapplied, there's nothing but humility and learning and gratitude for the
It's awesome.
opportunity and repairs that need to be
Yeah.
made, right? That's where, at the outset of these relationships, there's a shared understanding that this is not a guru relationship. I'm not here to
Yeah.
fix you. I don't have all the answers at all. I'm here alongside you learning, and by
Yeah.
teaching and sharing what I know, I actually get to learn.
It's
So
awesome.
I'm very thankful to each person I work with, because they're my true
Hmm.
teachers. And without that interface and interaction, how am I supposed to learn how to apply this? How do I know if it works?
Yeah. That
So,
is an awesome answer. It's almost like every new person you meet or talk to or teach, that is a lesson in itself. So you are learning no matter what. Like yes, you're teaching, but you're also like the student.
all day
Yeah.
long, I am on my back floored most
Yeah.
days.
Wow.
I get to engage with the human condition in raw touch points of,
Hmm.
transformation and healing, but also tons of
Yeah.
pain. And it brings up my stuff. So that's part of my purpose of becoming a better coach, is like being honest with my stuff so that I, don't, what's the word I'm looking for? I'm
Yeah.
responsible,
Yeah.
you know?
You mentioned in when you talk about like the hindbrain and the lizard brain, the limbic system, and then the monkey mind and those sort of things. I know, like with nasal breathing and whatnot, I'm trying to kind of go down this rabbit hole. I feel like you're a perfect person to ask this to. But when you breathe a certain way, because obviously I'm sending signals to my limbic system through the way I breathe, right? And we've talked about
Mm-hmm.
experiences and stories. Do you find that the way you breathe is tied to a specific story? Like, would it be okay?
Yes.
Is that enough to keep running with it?
Well, do you have more you want
No,
to
I
share
just
on
was
that?
trying to hope that that made sense in the way I asked it.
Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I'm
Yeah, no,
jumping. I'm with you.
please take it.
Um, I was instantly thinking of several combat veterans that I've worked with. I always ask and try to learn, like, what are some of your daily
Okay.
triggers now? One question I realized this just the other day after doing this for a long time. I never ask people what happened to them. That's really not my
Right.
business. If they want to share, I'm with it, all
Sure.
ears. But what I will ask is, like, where in your body do you feel a trigger? And are you comfortable sharing a specific example so we can apply the breath? And what I've heard a lot of people share is that the smell of burning trash or deployment in these third world countries that burn a lot of trash. So they're right away, they're in Afghanistan again. And so that's a moment where you asked, do we breathe a certain way when we're in a story? They're in a breath studio with me in Colorado. They're not in Afghanistan. But by talking about that, they'll feel changes in their physiology. And if I hook them up to a biofeedback machine, everything's on, everything's alive. The breath, the heart rate, the pupils, we don't measure the pupils, right? But the sweat, the muscle tension, it's in stress response just by thinking about that story. And so when they have, like, their wife is using the curling iron and it creates that smell is a deep story maker in the limbic system. But just through that smell, now their rate of breath increases. It becomes shallow, rapid, oral. And they can then apply the skill of stress and breath physiology to go bi-directional and engage with that dose of the trigger, to carve a new tunnel of association with it in the limbic system. That's what I do with people. I want them to identify the triggers, be in real time with them so that we can breathe through the association and repattern a new association with their lids down.
So would the hair dryer now be, that's progressive?
Yeah.
But do you make, okay, do you want to force the hair dryer, or
Never.
so
Never.
you just,
it's a willing engagement, right? It's like the cold plunge, right? You're saying, are you willing to be uncomfortable, and why? What could you get out of this? And that's such an important part of this process that we go through, is like, what would you, rather than ask, like, tell me what happened to you. I want to know your trauma. I say, what would you do with your life if, like, remember a time when you felt your best? Let's define the rested, ready state. What does that mean? It means you're moving from deep skeletal muscles. Your digestion is turned on. You've got your whole brain. Time is expansive. You're rested and ready. You can jump into sympathetic instantly. So you're not flooded out in depression. You're not keyed high in anxiety. Okay, so let's identify that. When's the last time you felt that way? And what would you do with your life if you could harness that on a regular basis? And then that motivation is like, okay, well, what can we start with that you're willing to engage with here to repattern some triggered stress that's become a story or unhealthy for you, holding you back?
So you ask them, what can we start with? Do they have the ideas, or do you have to come up with things? Like, that's what I would think is the cold tub, right? Like, okay, well, let's use the cold tub because we know that can be a thing that we can teach with, right? But do people typically have their own? Do you want them to come up with their own training program, or do you keep guiding them?
Yeah, it's layered, right? It's super personal. I use the cold plunge, the sauna. I use archery.
I see that.
I use the outdoors. I love using real-time, experiential, physical practices to bring the brain and body online in real time. And you know what? We've all intellectualized our trauma. Everybody knows their story. What I don't find that we're that skilled in, which is something I'm passionate about, obviously, is, can we, rather than just spin in the stories and feel victimized by them, can we use present time embodiment, breath, risk, cold, weaponry, marksmanship, the outdoors? Can we use that with breath to be chemists and to create some alchemy in our story to change our response to stress of all
Yeah.
kinds.
That is so cool.
To analyze what
Yeah.
happened, I don't need to reactivate your
Right.
trauma. We can if you want to, and then we'll be breathing. We'll go through that. But most people, they can identify it, and things like archery will show you pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
That is so cool. I mean, that sounds so cool. I am a huge believer in the outdoors too. Not necessarily of the outdoors, but more so of like the outdoors can just, if you go sit in the woods, you just breathe differently. So now it's not the woods, it's the breath. So like you're going to take that somewhere else. How do you take that feeling and then translate that into whatever your chaos is, right? But when you're saying that too, okay, so let's say I have a story or a trauma that I've been living in for 40 years, right? Which could happen, right? You're in this story you've had this hardwiring for 40 years. And then I start seeing a little bit of progress. Does that story, even if I break it, so I don't know if this is an actual answer. This is the most fascinating. I'm asking. This is the first. I feel like I'm asking poor. I'm just so curious. So I'm trying to think of things that I haven't thought about because this is making me think like that, right? But can I be in a story for so long and then start to see how I can break that story or become less reactive to it because I'm learning these skills, and then can I get out of the story entirely? But I would still know that I had that story at some point in my life.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, that's alchemy.
Yeah.
You transform pain into information and adaptation and learning. We don't want to lose the story completely. There's material there
Okay.
that wouldn't bother us at all if it wasn't important to us. If what happened in the past was totally aligned for us, it wouldn't bother us. But something from that trauma or our childhood, if it's been 40 years, has carved itself into a pattern that doesn't serve us. We're going to be agitated. That's good. That's our signal that those emotions and that agitation, that physiology is saying either you're not behaving in alignment with who you really are, or something from your story that you believe to be true doesn't align with who you really are. So let's start breaking it apart. And it's not just like moving past the story or around it. It's like going into what's useful from it and using what's useful from it to empower adaptation. And that will actually adjust your response in the future. Because we're not immune to stress or trauma. It's going to come again. And if we can learn from our stories, we can turn our pain into radical healing for other 100%. People. Service to others is one of the most vital ways we can heal. And that for me, I mean, everything I do comes from my own personal trauma.
Yeah. Well, and that's what, so when you improve on your personal story, that's got to come with a layer of confidence that it's almost like I don't want to use the word selfish, but selfishly, you should be trying to improve your story to be as accurate as you can get it to, because the higher that you evolve, the more people you can serve, right?
Yeah, so I love that.
Is that
That's
so?
Great.
I mean, you don't have to dive into it, but can you take into your personal account of like what you feel like sharing in terms of how you've seen? I mean, just kind of things that have made you go down this path, because this is amazing what you're talking about.
It's super fun to talk to you about it. Thank you for being with me here. So one of my trauma stories is that I survived my dad's suicide when I was 15. And that story, it's been 30 some years since he died. I'm 46. He died when I was 15, 31 years. Yay, math. Okay. So I have all of the bonding and emotional content from the love, because we were super, super close. I can feel it right now.
Yeah.
And I love that I have tears in my eyes because of how much we love each other. Like, that's so gorgeous. So I don't need to lose that to move through the story in a way that I have through this work with the breath and embodied healing. I'm at a place now It might change, but with the work that I do, I get the opportunity to be dosed again and again with suicidal tendencies. I work with heroin and meth addicts and people with neurological conditions and all kinds of
Mm-hmm.
shit going on. And I have curated a neutrality that gives me access through my pain of what I went through
Yeah.
with my dad, of what he
Yeah.
taught me through his choices, right? And what I've chosen to do with that information so that I can authentically show up for somebody in their pain without being triggered by mine.
So, okay, because that's what I was thinking. Do you ever have trouble with yourself because you're getting overloaded with that? So, and that's, you just answered it, but it's, I've been thinking that this whole time is if I keep dumping, I don't want to say constant stress from other people's lives is probably happening over and over and over again. And then I see you as a symbol of hope, faith, confidence, strength for myself. But you're also wearing another traumatic experience, or you getting that trigger. I've been thinking that this entire time of
Yeah.
how do you handle that? Because aren't you still getting exposed to your own story day after day?
Well, if I am, then
Yeah,
thank you, person who
sure.
just showed me where I need to do my own
Mm-hmm.
practice. Better clean that up if I want to keep doing this
100%.
work,
Yeah.
right? And so I appreciate my triggers when they happen. Then this isn't about, again, a guru perfection thing. This is like,
Yep.
I'm in it. I'm in the dugout,
Yeah.
right? I'm
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
you. We're
Yeah.
all on
We're
the same
letting it
team.
rock.
This is
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
we're in it. And so if I choose to support someone who chooses to work with me, we are willing participants in healing. What I'm really thankful for is that breath physiology and embodiment techniques have given me tools to not only transform and transmute and alchemize my own triggers, but to engage with people in this fun part
Yeah.
of this, which is like, we don't linger in the dirt.
Mm-hmm.
We use it as compost. We grow stuff. We build new
Mm-hmm.
beliefs. We breathe into being new
Mm-hmm.
potential. So, yes, of course, I get triggered. This work has made me such a better version of
Mm-hmm.
myself because if I'm not doing my practice, I can't do
For
this
sure.
work.
For sure.
And I slip all the time. If I slip for 2 or 3 days, I'm not as available or neutral, and I can't hold space in the
Mm-hmm.
same way. So it just keeps me so
Yeah,
honest.
that's cool.
I'm super thankful for
That
that.
almost becomes that just enhances your practice, as you're saying, right? I mean, it's like if you went from maybe a month, 2 months years ago of slipping to a month to 2 weeks to a week to 2 3 days, it's just decreasing the amount of time of slumping, if you will, right? When you
Yeah.
look at breath work, so breath work is, and before I press play, I told you about how I got into it heavily in 2015. I started trying to meditate like most athletes in college. You hide it from most people. So I did that for many years where I just would, I didn't know what I was doing. I was trying not to tell anyone about it. And so, I mean, 2011, 12, I started taking some psychological classes in college and they were just really intriguing to me. I just have always liked conversations and what the brain does. It's just always been something that was fascinating to me. I didn't know I would have things like this in my life, but my point to that is breath was like in my frame of reference. Like it was something I was going down, and then it started speeding up in 2015 and 2016, 17. It was kind of like, this is what I want to study. This is what I want to teach. And a lot of what you're saying, but you've been in it longer than I have in the sense of studying this great skill. And that's why it's so fascinating for me to speak to people like yourself. You've been able to see this thing evolve in the framework that I've seen it. It's really exploded, and maybe I'm off, but from my perception of it, it's really exploded in the last year to 2 years, and especially with COVID and whatnot in the last couple of months. It also seems like it's kind of grown too. I don't know if it's just in the people I'm around that I'm talking about it so much, but what is your perception of the actual skill of breathing and how you're seeing the language of people talking about it now compared to when you first started coming to it on your own and then turning it into something that you teach people?
It's gorgeous. I love that question. This is super fun. So I started studying breath work through my trauma when I
Mm-hmm.
was 15. It was the first time I had taken some yoga, and it was presented as a very dogmatic, you aren't doing
Yeah.
this right, you have to do it
Okay.
this way, a very systematic approach that was fine. It didn't really turn
Yeah.
me on. And then in my 20s, I went into some Western medical stuff. I was a wilderness EMT, I was a river guide. And for me, the breath started to play important roles in my 20s through the whitewater environment, to manage fear, to have enhanced breath holds so that I could
Yeah.
perform better. So both of those pieces of whitewater gave me a kind of an intrinsic understanding of the importance of breath. And then helping people on the ambulance through basic
Sure.
trauma. Like breath was an intuitive skill. I could train people to be calm if I was calm. The way that I was breathing, they would breathe. I'd have to meet them where they are
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
right? And then train them down. So those skills started to form up. And this is a long answer, but when I turned towards formal yoga study, pranayama breath was handed to me like a very sacred torch from Deborah
Okay.
Cohen, my first pranayama teacher. And I've had several since, including Ed Harold. He's breath as medicine physiology teacher. And of course, Art of Breath with Rob and Brian, and others. But when breath was handed to me, what I appreciate about the pranayama background is it was given with this tremendous sense of responsibility. She taught me that this stuff is medicinal and it messes with people's nervous system. So it is not a gimmick, and you have to deliver it skillfully with sensitivity to contraindications. And it can hurt
Mm-hmm.
people if you don't give them these basic skills. And so it elevated breath from something that was just becoming an important aspect of my kayaking and of the work I was doing with hurt
Mm-hmm.
humans into this, like, wow, there's this deep ancient study that is. And then I started resolving my trauma using that same methodology, or principles rather, of like, this is how it works with your
Yeah.
nervous system. So the way the conversation has shifted is exciting for me, because it was about 2006 that I started working with combat
Okay.
veterans routinely year round. And I quickly saw the need to reinterpret those pranayama breath skills into a language of science and engagement and experiential
Mm-hmm.
understanding that was down to
For
earth,
sure. 100%.
non-dogmatic,
Yep.
non-guru based. And so developing the skill of interpreting breath in 2006 until now, I'm so
Yeah, I bet.
excited about just the potential we have as breath educators to
Yeah.
work together. I'm learning from
Yeah.
everybody so much
Yeah.
right now. So an elevated conversation, my only caution that I want to keep folding into it is like, let's not forget that this, if you go get a training in performance breath and you don't know the physiology
Mm-hmm.
deeply, intimately yourself, you could hurt people if you can't read anxiety and you push somebody super
Yeah.
far. Uh,
Brian was actually one of the first people who told me about that, in a large part of Rob Wilson. And then we were telling him stuff that we were doing just on ourselves. And I remember Rob was kind of, laying the hammer on me, like, no. But,
yeah,
and you learn that over time. I'm not upset about that, because I wouldn't have been able to have the conversation if I wouldn't have been trying things. So it actually kind of worked out.
exactly. Well, that's why I am so aligned with
Yeah.
those guys. Like, I took an Art of Breath workshop in
Okay.
Tennessee 3 years
Yeah.
ago, maybe. And a mutual friend had me reach out to BMAC, because he's like, what you're doing with vets is the same language as this
Yeah.
cat, and you guys
Yeah.
need to
Yeah.
talk. And so once I started paying attention to what they were putting out there, I was so aligned because of
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
that piece. They're responsible with the material, they're principled in it, it's physiology
Mm-hmm.
based, and it just gives this green light to evolve our
Mm-hmm.
understanding without dogma, without
Mm-hmm.
ego. It's just so exciting what's happening right
Yeah, it
now.
is. And it's cool to see, because you're right. I love how you said meet them where they are. I actually went and you'll be proud of me. I went to a yoga seminar, like a workshop, I guess. Yeah,
Nice work.
it was 2 years ago. And the lady, I actually asked her out we went and had, not on a date, we went out and had coffee afterwards, because I was like, I got to keep asking questions. And it was me and my buddy. There was probably 30 women there. We were the only two guys, and this yoga instructor, I've actually had her on the podcast, but she comes up and we have coffee afterwards, and I just wanted to keep asking questions about yoga and breathing, and she was speaking this language like Atman and all that stuff, and the yoga language. So I'm at this workshop the day of, and it was awesome, but I couldn't understand anything. Like I'm listening to these words and I go, I kind of think I know what I'm talking about. And I didn't want to be not like everyone else. So I was just taking notes on stuff that I didn't even know what we were doing. And so we end up going out afterwards, and she said something to me that has stuck with me for many years now, for 2 years now. So she said, you need to learn the learner, right? And that's kind of what you're saying, meet you where you are. And that's the same thing that I've learned with breath work, and I can kind of tee you up here to take it even deeper, but you can show someone the power of breath within 10 seconds if you want. You can really teach somebody that and scare them or freak them out or whatever. And you can show the power of breath is rather easy. Like I can get your attention rather quickly through a breathing drill or exercise, and doing anything like that, I can get you to understand it. But the thing is, how do I meet you where you are? And you already kind of answered that earlier with maybe slowing the breath or changing the brain chemistry. But when you have meet someone on day 1, year 2, year 5, you're constantly having to meet your clients where they are, or your friends or your family, whatever. You're trying to meet people where they are. And as you do that and you evolve your coaching and your training with breath specifically, what are you constantly trying to see just in your frame of reference of, okay, this person's now ready to level up into deep breath holds, or maybe they're ready to super ventilate, or maybe they just need cadence breathing, or maybe they need the ice. Like, how do you determine when someone has evolved to level up?
So it is very personal, because people come with different contraindications, different limitations. Sometimes it's mobility issues. If somebody has traumatized, unresolved trauma in their system, and they brace all the time, and they've got clavicular breath patterns where they're lifting the collarbones to just once in a while suck in a breath because they're not breathing. It's rapid, shallow, or it's in the deep parasympathetic dysregulation, and they're flooded out. And so they're not breathing in a different way. They're like so passively stuck in the bottom of the exhale that they're not taking in life. So anyway, there's a bunch of ranges of things that I look to read for how they are breathing. And then say, like with the ice, I'm not going to throw somebody who's stress profile. I have different metrics I use, different instruments to test their stress, whether it's CO2 tolerance, resting heart rate variables over time. Sometimes we do a Whoop band and do heart rate variability. We use different metrics to kind of see progress. We also use qualitative stuff. Like, I can see on a Whoop band how much sleep someone's getting. I can see if they're in the red or the yellow. That's not a day that I'm going to throw them in ice.
Yeah.
What a great tool to be able to say, wow, you are, how do you feel? First of all, like, tell me what's your body telling you, really? And then let's look at your breath patterning. And usually I'll take their pulse, and they don't think I'm counting their breaths. So then I'll count their breaths per minute. That's an old ambulance trick. Like, if you tell somebody you're counting their breath.
Oh, Emily with the little sneak attack there.
Then they'll coax their breath into slower, sweeter rhythms. But if somebody presents with a breath of over 15 to 18 times per minute, then they don't belong in the cold. So it is personal. We've got to kind of see what people need and grow a program together over time. And then it's also about like their daily flow, like what's working, what's not. And I try to create like a failure model where like that's actually what we're looking for.
Is failure?
Yeah, like to say, you were supposed to meditate and breathe 5 days this week, and you only reported 3. That model doesn't work for me. So what I try to do is say, okay, you agreed to 5. You did it for 3. How did those days feel?
Sure.
Awesome. Okay. What got in the way on those other 2 days? And so we build a program based on real-time obstacles, and that's where some of those untrue beliefs start to surface.
That is really cool.
right?
I know what you're saying.
Mm.
I've never had it, I guess, said like that. I've never had the failure model, because that makes a lot of sense to me. I've never had the failure model that simplified. I mean, can you go more into the depth of why that's paid off? Because I can 100% see how that would pay off
Mm.
deeply. I look at it as, I was in a gym franchise years ago, and everyone came in and they wanted to
Mm.
work out 6 days a week, but they weren't even working out one day a week at the time, so
Right.
that's not going to work, right? So you're kind of using the failure model, right? Am I on that? Is that kind of the same philosophy? As I know if you're not going to
Yeah,
meditate. Yeah.
I look for, I guess a better word would be the obstacle
Okay.
model, and taking the moral failing out of our
Mm-hmm.
behavior is a clutch part of what I do, because we have enough unresolved stress patterns, and we live in a paradigm culturally where we pay a coach and we see them as an authority figure that's there to
Mm-hmm.
judge us as right, wrong, good, bad, progressing well or not. And I do not put myself in that position. I'm there to keep people
Sure.
accountable and make clear boundaries and agreements
Mm-hmm.
and goals. But I'm also there to not allow people to indulge in beating themselves up and avoiding the real work, because a lot of people fall into, this always happens.
Yeah.
And it does always happen
Yeah.
statistically. Like, how many gym memberships get
Right.
unused? How many online courses aren't fulfilled? People don't follow
Right.
through. So rather than fight that externally, and be like, you need to do this, and I'm the
Yeah. Yeah.
coach, and I've got your plan all figured out, just follow my lead. I'm like, let's follow your lead. What got in your way?
Sure.
And what's your belief about that?
Yeah, that's really cool. You're right on that. I love that. I align with that tremendously. So one more thing before I kind of take you through the Diamond series, I'll ask you that real quick. But just one more thing that I wanted to ask you, because you mentioned in your 20s that you were, obviously it sounds like you have outdoors as part of your blood a little bit, and it sounds like that's a big part of just your history as a human. And then you also mentioned how you use archery or the wilderness in terms of healing and strengthening in mind and body and all that stuff too. Why, this is broad, but I hope it comes off narrow. Why have you, or how have you found such success with that? Or why do you believe in that so deeply, in the sense of, I would like to see, I agree with you, put it that way. But I always think of, why do we not do that more? Like, why don't all coaches, or in any industry, why isn't nature a part of teaching?
I don't
You
know.
know?
Because we lost our nature. We forget that we are
Mm-hmm.
nature completely.
Yeah, I mean, and you've
You
been
know,
doing that. So
so
it's like, why do you find such connection with that in the progressiveness of it?
it was how I healed initially before I had
Mm-hmm.
breath work. Something in my spirit, I have oppositional defiance, so I didn't want to um, get a job after college and sit in a cubicle and like climb any
Yeah.
ladders. I wanted risk. I wanted to feel. I wanted to learn and grow and heal. And I'm really fortunate that I grew up in Colorado and had a family that brought me up, skiing, and it was
Yeah.
recreational. But for me, it's not that anymore. It's interconnection that's vital.
Wow.
And I'm always trying to find ways to recognize that you don't have to be on a trail in the middle of the wilderness. Right. It's what you eat. It's what you put into your mouth. It's in the water in your faucet when you wash the dishes. It's in every breath you take. Like, we're not separate, but having the chance to be absorbed in places that are wild, where things are allowed to grow the way that they want to push each other through natural boundaries and territories instead of fences and walls. That speaks to my human spirit of what I needed in the wake of lots of trauma in my teens. So I would get out in the woods and we'd ski and it'd be fun or whatever. But then in the summers, that's when I figured out in the high country, like, I can go off trail. And now my brain started feeling differently. Like, I'm paying attention and I'm part of this place. So
That's
answering part of it?
yeah, I think you answered it right there at the end of, you're a part of it. it's like consciousness. It's like meditation and movement, right? It's forced awareness really being off trail. And that's a metaphor for not just taking a bike off trail or walking off trail, right? It's like there's a lot to understand and unpack that. You also brought up nutrition again, and I almost forgot to bring it up. But one other little jab there is, I'll ask it from my background of it, where a lot of us play, and a lot of guys that I work with, we get done playing sports at 10 o'clock at night, and a lot of these guys play in front of high level, high crowd volume things. If you're playing an NFL football game and you get done at 10 o'clock at night, you're in a sympathetic arousal state, right? So to be able to digest food, a lot of people that I see and work with, they have gut issues, and then that we know has the way you think and that sort of stuff. But to be able to transition breath and help with nutrition, I'll kind of give it to you there, but I feel the same way. Nutrition is based off of how you feel. If you feel good about it, you're probably eating the right things, and try to eat something as natural, as good as you can get. And if your energy is good, you're probably doing something right. But also nutrition has so much to do with the breathing as well. And you mentioned in the beginning, and then you just touched on it again, but I was curious about that because it's hard not to focus on nutrition in any space, even if you're not a nutritionist or about that. It's hard not to make that. It's a part of humanity. I mean, it's a necessity, right? So, yeah, it's nature. So what's kind of your view on that, or what's your teaching point of just that when you do gloss over that, how do you sort of touch on that topic?
That's awesome. I mean, once again, it's that I try to empower people again and again that your body's really smart, that your behavior is driven from your physiology. So I'll tackle this first from a behavioral standpoint. Nice. A lot of people I meet want nutrition changes because they are unhappy with their bodies, or they feel wrong for their diets. There's like a moral judgment going on, but they haven't learned about their stress physiology or their breath, and they maybe haven't even inhabited their belly for years, maybe a lifetime of sucking in the belly, shallow chest breathing patterns that rob our enteric nervous system of deep integration, innervation, intelligence, right? If we're not breathing diaphragmatically, nasally, our enteric nervous system is cut off. So I approach it first from this angle of like, hey, your body's brilliant. Tell me more about the time you grabbed that cookie and that Monster Energy drink. What were you doing the previous 8 hours? How'd you sleep the night before? Okay, smart body, you were super depleted and fried. And your mind, your willpower had nothing to do with it at that point because you've passed your window of stress tolerance, and your smart body craves sugar and quick fixes. And that's a state that you can read and participate with. So then, nourishing a connection to the belly is really hard for people who have encoded a sense of moral judgment around their diet or their bodies. And it's extremely gentle work. It can trigger a lot of trauma for people when they start to bring their awareness even down below the diaphragm. We store all kinds of stuff in there. So it's a gentle approach, and it does all flow together. I try to empower people to see food as information. It's not good, bad, right, wrong. It's a signature. There's energy in it, and you can engage with it and learn from it. So if you had a meal that made you feel like shit, awesome. Let's break it down without the moral failing piece. Like, what happened? Okay, then let's start to do that. The good news is you have another meal coming up.
You get another chance.
Try again.
You get another chance. Well, I'm stoked that I asked that question and didn't forget, because that was a beautiful answer. So, I mean, it's an absolute beautiful answer. I couldn't agree with it more. I mean, it's so simple yet profound and complex. It's simple yet not. You know, but that's it's your next choice in your journey. So, as I kind of told you when I was telling you beforehand, something I'll just kind of wrap things up with you, Emily, and kind of feed it into yourself. And you already answered this deeply, but we always like to ask everybody their purpose in the sense of how they identify with themselves, looking at through the lens of how they serve others, and then most importantly, what do they find willing to struggle for? That's always been a question we ask internally at MindStrong and whatnot. But that's something to kind of take that and run from the beautiful story and touch points you've already gathered and given. When you find what is worth struggling for to serve the greater good, what is that pushes you to try to learn as much as you can and understand it as well as you can so that you can meet people where they are and help them.
Man, you guys
No,
don't
we
mess
go in the
around,
deep
do
end.
you? I love it. So distilling my purpose into its like simplest form is that I've discovered for now that I feel most aligned in my purpose when I'm helping people remember that they are innately worthy, like essentially innately worthy, and that we are not our successes, we're not our stories, we're not our trauma, we're not our failures, like recovering that sense of worthiness. And from there, reskilling capable response patterns, because we have some serious problems to solve on the planet right now. And we can't do it if we're reactive and ego maniacs and feeling victimized and entitled everywhere. We need to get real, lean into science, and support each other to remember that we are lovely beings having radical chaotic experiences sometimes. So my purpose is something that I want for myself too. I always need to remember my intrinsic worth. So
just gave me chills. So
it's not small stuff I'm going for this lifetime.
No, that's powerful. That's very powerful. And I hope that we're able to pass the torch in some of your work on this. That really did give me chills. I got sweaty palms. But you're right. You're so right. We have to become less reactionary, especially what's happening. And that's why this is so cool to talk to you, because what you're talking about is just, there's a human can use these tools and these skills. It's an all global thing, which is cool to be a part of, right? And
it's consciousness.
It's wild.
At its core, it's like raising consciousness to participate in passing on a better planet.
Yeah, that is such a cool way of putting it. So and that I'll kind of tee that up too for the movement of that forward. And we always sort of tie that in with the vision, right? Because being present in performing moment to moment as a human is obviously powerful, and the breath is a huge indicator of how to run that system. But there's also a piece out in front that motivates us to create momentum and create action to keep doing things. So when you do see your work, and you've been in the game for a long time, which is so cool to see how you said 2006, like I wasn't even thinking about breath in 2006. So to see it evolve so quickly in my view is really cool. I can't imagine how cool it is for you, right? Because it's like you've been fighting the good fight in this specific task longer than I have. So I look up to you in that sense, right? Of, it's super cool, right? And so, but it can get further, and we can get more aware of it, and we can create less reactions, and we can keep doing that in the future as well. So when you see yourself and what you can keep adding to the space for the greater good of humanity, what is the excitement that pushes you in the future that maybe you won't even get to, but something that drives you to what could be?
Like so big. That's so big North Star that like you might not even touch. I love it. Like that North Star for me would be like radically aligning with responsive, innate worthiness, right? To solve systemic issues, to take the disruption of our times and start to radically shift our response to some of these big systems, whether that's our food, our healthcare, our military, our EMS services, our education. Like you can see disempowerment and reactivity in all of that. And structurally, if we shift towards owning and being responsible for our conditioning and adapting to that with responsiveness, I would love to see someday, hopefully in my lifetime, participating with many empowered breath teachers, a world where, say, our EMS service changes from like 48-hour shifts to honoring the science of human performance and honoring the human being's energy
Yeah.
systems to allow us to restructure things so that people that experience trauma on the front lines of helping others get adequate rest and nourishment as a rule.
Yeah.
That's normal. That kids who experience anxiety are listened to. Like, why are you so anxious? What's bothering you? Oh, you're under fluorescent lights all day, being crammed full of information, not moving. So all of these areas where we can see our food paradigm, our big pharmaceutical industry, you know, again, I'm not going small this lifetime, but I'm like so many of us, right? This isn't like my movement. This is our time, our movement to show up and to not miss it. If I had a mantra, it's, I don't want to miss it. I want to rise and thrive and not make it such a struggle. I think this could be a beautiful, adapting, healing evolution. It's going to be uncomfortable, but that discomfort, as you know better than most, can be so liberating and so empowering. So let's do it. It's not, again, it's not my movement. This is, I'm inspired by you, by what you're doing with athletes and in your work with MindStrong project. It's such a shared time of expanding consciousness through science, through reality, through skill.
Well, we get to do stuff that we do because of people like yourself. So, I mean, it's what you guys do and what you guys are doing with Power, Speed, and Endurance and your specific brand as well. And that you're teaching, all of you guys have, there's shades of what you guys do and what we do. And that's something that I want to actually have it recorded that, you know, that we do watch what you do and we try to implement that and learn from afar. So to be able to, one, get to start talking to you and then have a conversation with you like this that we get to share with the world, you know, something I think that your greatest form of leadership is the time and the currency of that. So, I mean, to give that away to MindStrong today from myself and everyone else who, unfortunately, we live all over the place, just like you and your crew. You know, you guys live all over the place. So unfortunately, we don't get to always do these podcasts together. We try to as best as we can, but I speak on behalf of our entire team. Thank you for the time and thank you for sharing that with us. But yeah, I mean, the goal here is to pass on a little bit of the torch of what you just said. And Emily, it's an honor to have shared that conversation with you. I look forward to keeping it moving forward too, and I'll be following and watching and learning from you as I have, and it's a cool experience. But for people who are listening to pass this podcast and this conversation, how can people get a hold of you, follow you, learn you? What are some of the platforms that you're on where people can hear more of what you're sharing?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for this opportunity. It's super fun. The Skill of Stress online course is the curated content from all of these years of engaging in this work, and it's available at powerspeedendurance.com. And that is one immediate channel. And then stay tuned, because as things open up, we'll be doing more live workshops, hopefully. And then I do work privately and in groups through intrinsicway.com. And that's my Insta handle, intrinsic_way, which is always a fun way to see each other and, you know, get a more textured view of what's going on day to day. So I appreciate you giving me a voice as I start to lose mine. All of this important stuff. It's like such a pleasure to talk to you. What a bright, incredible, fun conversation.
Yeah, likewise. Hey, enjoy the rest of your weekend and the Friday. And again, thank you from everyone here and everyone who's listening. Enjoy it. Look forward to sharing it. But Emily, for now, we'll sign off, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Harvey. Bye.